to talk, I think this is going to complement really nicely with what Taylor was talking about. I don't have a lot of the kind of actual numbers. I'm just kind of about being excited about building things and sort of showing you a lot of examples of different types of ways that that kind of AR can help your brand potentially. So I've done a lot of different things. I won't go into them, but you can look me up on LinkedIn and such. I've worked with VR and AR and some film effects and various types of games over the years. And I've also done a fair bit of teaching and designing courses as well, which I'll come back to later. So augmented reality, I think we all probably know what it is, but there is definitely a mixed crowd in here. So I was going to just do a really quick summary just to kind of get us all on the same page. So basically, you have your regular standard reality 1.0. Then you've got some sort of device, technology that comes between you and that reality, be it a phone or hopefully in not too many years, maybe like contact lenses or implants or who knows what. Maybe we don't hope for that, but it'll probably happen. And then you use that technology to sort of combine that original real world with some sort of computer-generated information, be it, say, the next an arrow to a restaurant, or something more like the type of stuff that we're going to look at tonight. So the real question here is this useful? And I think again Taylor had some good points there. Is this something that is going to be useful for your brand to help you promote things and to get those pages on, say, Instagram and Facebook to actually get more followers and more people interacting? So here's a small example of companies that are using this and have used AR in the last few days. You could basically take any kind of large brand, Starbucks or Walmart or any type of film franchise or kind of theater franchise, film studio, and just Google that name and then AR beside it. If you try that, you'll find that like 90% of them will have some kind of an AR promotion that has gone with either to promote their brand or release some new product or et cetera, et cetera. And there's all kinds of different ways of doing that. And so the real question is, so why are they doing this? Well, first of all, it's kind of cool and trendy. You can do things like the puppy dog filter. I mean, that's great, but that's only going to get you so far. I mean, I'm sure people are already thinking, well, yeah, AR, it's maybe a flash in the pan. Maybe it's something it's kind of, it's the flavor of the month. And that's true, but it does kind of get people in the door. So the real question is, how can you get them in the door and sort of give them something a little more solid that's going to keep them around and justify what you're doing? So as I kind of asked before, basically everybody has a smartphone. So you can, in terms of, if you're looking at something like VR, for example, one of the big barriers to entry is that you've got to go out and get yourself, a Vive or an Oculus or whatever to be able to sort of access that. But in this case, virtually everybody in modern society is going to be able to access that filter, and those are, as Taylor was kind of throwing the numbers out there, that's billions of people basically that can interact with your brand. And then using AR allows them to interact more directly with your brand. So whether it is something like the logos on your forehead, which probably people aren't going to do. More if you're creating, well, you'll see some of the examples that I'm going to show of interacting with the brand. And then try before you buy is a really good example. We'll see a couple of those as well. So a very practical example of saying, well, I want to hold something in my hand, or I want to be able to walk around something, to give you a little more than just, say, taking a photograph. And in a catalog, you can actually build that chair or that new building that's going up. You can have a model of that and kind of walk around it and sort of really see what that looks like in a different way. And then, of course, integration with social media campaigns. So in particular, Spark AR that we're going to look at tonight is really only works with Facebook and Instagram at this point. So you can certainly use AR to do other things. You can have other types of apps or things that only work in like Magic Leap goggles, et cetera, et cetera. But it works really, really well as Taylor was saying, in terms of helping to build followers and sort of enhance what you're already doing. So they're increased social media followers, and then there's also analytics. So anytime you're doing this kind of digital marketing, and if you've already done that through Google or Facebook or whatever, you you know that the huge benefit of that is that you've got some analytics to analyze and kind of say, kind of justify your spend in a particular area. So you can get certain types of reports with your AR back, your filters. You can tell how many people took a selfie, and things like that. The reporting in Spark AR is kind of it's sort of primitive right now. They have a few things, but it's going to grow. So I'm going to show a few examples, again, of some of these kind of brand recognition type things. So movie tie-ins is a really big one. You pretty much have to be sleeping under a rock to not have seen some of these. Lots of them around like all the Marvel movies, for example. This isn't actually an original, like a branded one. This is just a fan one. But I think it's actually better than the one that was created, or the real experience, which is basically, Spider-Man kind of drops down and you can take a selfie with him, right? This is a little more interactive. And then, of course, doing things like selfie filters, taking photographs of yourself and then processing them in some way, to sort of in this way, sort of giving it that kind of graphic comic book look. But again, sort of branded and promoting the release of that. And then one of the things we'll look at a lot tonight, or a few times, is this kind of idea of using your face as a way of sort of driving an effect. And in this case, it's really just using that face tracking to do something that's sort of relevant for the brand. Okay, so another application which you may have seen. Just a quick hand, how many of you have seen this one? 19 Crimes? Yeah, it's pretty popular, and it's really a very, basically an easy effect to do. You could certainly do something like this with Spark AR. But the way they've marketed this is they have a specific app that is, I think it's Living Labels, and they have a bunch of different kind of wines that they support. And this particular one allows you to sort of just point at the label and then get this kind of story of a convict. But the thing here is that it's a trigger from the actual label itself. So whereas the Spider-Man one, you could point anywhere, this one needs that particular marker to be able to trigger. Here's another example. Same idea of triggering something off of a marker, but you're actually building an entire sort of 3D environment instead of sort of like augmenting that particular image. And here's a Jack Daniels one. Again, same kind of idea, but really once you've got that marker in space, you can pretty much do anything that you might do in any type of 3D production. And just there's another sort of extended version of this effect that kind of builds a little distillery, and it's very stylish. It's a really cool one. And just a couple of other quick examples. So this is like an ice cream, and it's triggering off the label at the top, and just sort of building a bit of a 3D environment there. And this one, again, same sort of thing. You can see that you can actually kind of fake that illusion of depth because you're sort of replacing the object. So a lot of things do that. Someone actually earlier was showing me their business card. Was it you? Yeah, you were showing me your business card, and he had an effect like that where basically you point at the business card and it looks like you can go inside it. So it kind of creates this sort of illusion of depth. And speaking of business cards, so this is another great application. I think this is huge. I think there's an enormous market here. Just basically taking whatever it is that is appropriate for that particular business, and you could probably just come up with an effect that worked for that kind of business and like sell it to 1 million people that have cards like that. So there's something that's kind of like illustration. Here's something that's a little more I guess maybe they represent a sports franchise or something. And this one is interesting because it's almost like an interactive web page. So you've got a lot of little pieces kind of coming out that you could then interact with rather than going to a web page. Sort of gives you a little kind of a different way to interact with that. Virtual clothing is a really great practical application of AR. This one is showing sort of just trying on shoes. So they're basically doing foot tracking and then allowing you to try on different shoes. Personally, I think I still want to go and try on the shoe. But this, I think, is one of almost the kind of killer apps for this type of AR. It's just a perfect application. So it's IKEA, and you've got your virtual catalog on the phone. You look through the catalog. You say, hey, I like that chair. You point it at your living room. Yeah, it's going to look great in that corner. And then you go back to the catalog and you buy it. I mean, application here would be, say, treasure hunts. You can also do geolocation type AR, so things like Pokemon Go, where you've got very specific locations that might trigger some kind of AR event. This is more, this is an interesting one because what they've done is they've used some artificial intelligence to be able to analyze almost like just everyday objects. So it doesn't have to be a specific marker like with the wine labels. You can basically, what they do is they give you a bunch of clues. So in this case, it might be, what's something that cuts paper and gets crushed by rocks? And so you say, oh yeah, it's a pair of scissors or a shear or something. And so you go and you point it at that, and it doesn't have to be a very specific one. It's, it just fits the pattern, and then you get a cookie for that, right? And then you can go and, I don't know, do things with your cookies. I like this example as well. So this is more of just something that would happen within a mall, and you can think of it kind of as like a localized Pokemon Go, where you've just got things that work maybe with the stores in that mall, and it could be either triggered off of locations, or it could be triggered off of, say, markers that you've got on the wall, and then you go and maybe collect points and spend them somewhere, things like that. I love this one as well. One of the wonderful things you can do with, say, 3D scanners. So if you've got something like a structure sensor that works to basically, it kind of just works with your phone, and you can scan things, or you can use some type of photogrammetry if you've ever messed with that, which basically means just take a whole bunch of pictures, and then there's a little bit of AI that kind of puts that all together into a model like this. Any way you kind of generate this, it's, you can see that that is, because it's effectively a capture of a real object, is almost indistinguishable from the real object itself. And you can imagine applications like this where you've got, say, a restaurant, maybe they've got virtual versions of their food, or in this case, kind of a Subway type app. And here's another example using a handbag. So you got the kind of real one, then you got the scanned version. You could certainly do this with like a 3D model. I don't know if any of you or many of you got a chance to look at the duck that I kind of left out there. But that's an example of going from, say, an original 3D model and then to an AR model that kind of compared to the real one. But this is a little different because it's actually scanning a real world object first.